Hi everyone, I'm Mamta Rodrigues and welcome to the next podcast for TP Women. For those that don't know me, I co-chair TP Women and I'm Chief Client Officer of Banking, Financial Services and Insurance here at TP. I have the absolute privilege of two special guests with me here today. I have Alison Brittain, who's the chair of the Premier League for football or soccer as we say it in the US. And I have Rob Hawthorn, who is Senior Vice President and Executive at Teleperformance. He has a history of banking, which he's going to touch upon as well. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. So with that, welcome Alison, welcome Rob. Would you take a minute and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Mamta. I will. My name is Alison Brittain. As Mamta said, I am currently the chair of English Soccer's Premier League. I'm also the chair of a company called Dunelm, which is the UK's largest home furnishings group. And I'm also the chair of the King's Trust charitable group, which is a global group that His Majesty the King is the patron of.
Lovely, welcome. And Rob?
Sure. I'm Rob Hawthorn. I work in the business development team, specifically focusing on banking. I've been with TP now coming up to nearly 5 years, but prior to that I had a banking career and I was just with Barclays for 38 years. Hence that's how I know Alison, because our paths crossed many times when we were both at Barclays together. So thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure.
I love it. And you know what, we always talk about this in TP Women. It's not about just women speaking to women about how we work in the workplace, in our personal lives, professional lives. It's men and women working together. And today we're going to amplify that even more. So really excited. So I'll jump in. Alison, you've had a phenomenal career. And so much of it as you reflect back, whether it's your positions that you hold today in the Premier League or a multitude of positions that you've held prior to, what do you see as the key leadership principles that you'd like to share with our audience?
That's a great question. I don't know that I'd elevate these to principles per se, but if I think about some of the things that might characterize me, I guess the first is that I really need to be passionate and excited about what I do in work. Work takes up a lot of time, as we all know. It takes up a big part of our lives. And so everything I've ever done, I've been excited about getting out of bed in the morning to do, and I am able to find joy in the purpose and activity that I'm involved in. I've quite a lot of energy. I'm a hugely energetic person and quite action-orientated person, and that has stood me in good stead as well. And I'm very curious, and I'm very open to learning. And I think that has been one of the things that has been personally a standout for me, because the world around us changes all the time. And if I look back to when I started my career, when, let's just be clear, ladies and gents, we didn't have mobile phones.
Right.
We didn't have computers. We had microfiche on our desk back in those days. So, and you think about what the world looks like now, and then look ahead and think what it's going to be like in the next 20 years. The speed of change is getting exponentially higher, and we need to be creatures that adapt. So, as Darwin said, it's not the strongest that survive, it's the people and animals that adapt the quickest that survive. So being curious and being willing to learn has been an abiding principle and still is today. And so, and particularly when moving industries or organisation, the ability to learn and assimilate very quickly becomes really important.
So true, being comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And I truly believe the continuous learning is so important. I learn more from my teenagers today than ever before, especially with the multitude of channels, communication channels that they use, of which I also started when we were in mainframe world. So imagine the world where we are today and FaceTime and access to so many different channels.
I remember the excitement with which I received my first BlackBerry.
Oh, I do too. I remember.
It was liberating.
Yes.
Because at last, because I had small children at the time, And at last I could work on the train, which meant I could leave work earlier and get home for bath time with the children in an effective and productive way. And of course, your thumbs. Had BlackBerries survived, which, I mean, there's a lesson about change and adapting. They had the market. They owned the corporate, didn't they?
Yes.
They owned us all. Had they survived, the next generation would have had very large thumbs, because we were all doing this with our BlackBerries on the trains home and on the train to work. But as a mother, as an executive, working mum, it was a liberating experience to get that technology. And I have found technological advance as my friend, not my enemy, all the way through.
Well said. I completely agree. I'm going to turn it over to you, Rob. You also have had a phenomenal career. 38 years at Barclays, 5 phenomenal years here at TP.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. What are the key principles, leadership principles, or perhaps even one that really stands out to you that you'd want to amplify here today?
You know, I think I concur exactly with what Alison said around you have to get up in the morning and be excited and want to do the job. But also I think for me, communication and being open around communication, being very clear in communication, particularly as a leader, looking for to guide your team and lead your team so that they know what is expected, they know what outcome is being sought and what you're looking for. I think those things are really important. And I think clarity of communication for me was something that I tried my best to do when I was at Barclays, and certainly something I try and do here at TP. So clear communication and targets. Targets are really important.
So being the chair of the Premier League, and I've been reflecting about this, that what an awesome opportunity to be here in your offices. And you know, of course, my husband and son are so jealous of me sitting here and meeting you as well. What are some challenges that you faced, especially as the chair, a woman? Usually it's a man's sport. Unfortunately, we shouldn't say that. There's many women, including my daughter and myself, who love football. But challenges that you've perhaps seen or experienced whilst here.
Do you know, I think to some extent, as a result of my extreme old age, I faced the bigger ones earlier.
Sure.
So if I look back to corporate banking back in the 80s and 90s, corporate and commercial banking, that was a place of enormous challenge for women. There were virtually no women who worked there, in fact. So there were no role models, there was no one to look up to, there was no one to learn from that looked like you. So that was a different era and environment. And of course, now that has changed. If I look at the makeup of the league here, and if you walk through the offices here, you'd see a huge number of women who work here and are part of the team. The other thing that's changed, of course, is that you've grown up and matured personally. And so your resilience levels are significantly higher as you've been through lots of times of crisis and issues and management.
Okay.
And when I think about that, and I also think about what advice might I have given my younger self if I'd had the opportunity to do so.
That was my next question, so let's go there.
And so one of the things I think about is competence. Your personal competence as a person at work is enormously important, and that requires an enormous amount of hard work and effort, and you become professionally competent in both hard skills in analytics, solving problems, making decisions, and softer skills, managing teams, influencing people, being inspirational for people and bringing them with you. And core competence is absolutely necessary for everybody to get on, but it's not sufficient. So you need other things as well. And through communication, as Rob said earlier, incredibly important, but then you're communicating to very large numbers of people through other people, not always directly. And so through all of that, you staying competent, staying current, being curious, learning, that's all really important. But so are all the softer skills. So is the EQ as well as the IQ. You learn to be quite resilient as well, because you come up over 30 or 40 years with 100 knockbacks,
Yeah.
you know, with a
Yeah.
but you do learn that you might have just missed the ball, but you can swing again. Or in my world of soccer, you may have just missed that penalty, but next time you'll have practiced 10 more times and you'll hit it into the net.
Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you. We've talked about influence and leadership and paying it forward. I know you've always shared with me what a phenomenal impact Alison has had on you. Can you jump in and talk about that just briefly?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll start by saying, as you've just heard, I mean, Alison is a fantastic leader. So I first met Alison 20 plus years ago when we were both at Barclays, and Alison had just become Chief Executive of Business Banking. My role then was running one of the large contact centres in Barclays, and I got invited to meet Alison as one of the key stakeholders. One thing that stood out from that meeting was after about an hour of chatting, she said to me at the end, I always count the number of times you say the word customer, because Alison is incredibly customer centric and always peers through the eyes of the customer in whichever role she's had. So I hoped I'd passed that test, because I was thinking as soon as she'd said it, well, how many times did I say customer this, customer that? But also, I think inspirational, I say trusted confidant. My career then moved on and latterly ended up running all of the call centres and all of the back office and all of the internet banking support for the corporate bank globally. And there have been many times when I've needed help and advice on a personal level as well as on a professional level. And I've always found that the number one person to give that great wise counsel. So thank you, Alison, because it's particularly valued, and you're a great friend as well. And by the way, she's a lot of fun as well.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I love that. Now I know you had a question for Alison.
I do. Some people will have stood out maybe as mentors or as people who have particularly influenced you. What is it about those people? Who are they? And you know, what is it that made them stand out particularly?
Well, we started a minute ago talking about the three women, and they were stand out because they were so different and they were so generous, and actually for the first time I could see that there were women who were getting to very senior positions, and that was a big first for me. My second mentor, after the first year I changed, was the chair, was a very seasoned chair of another organisation, a big retail organisation. And his help and advice was quite different. And I went through within my organisation a chair change. So I was losing one chair and gaining another. He really helped me with that transition and how to manage that transition. So if I can say, even at that level, you can't stop learning. Right. This becomes a theme. You know, I'm a great believer in this idea that you've just got to keep learning new things, and you've got to be open to having people who will help you do that. And so now I mentor people. So I have 3 or 4 people who are chief executives in the FTSE 100 who I mentor, and they took me on as their mentor when they took the CEO role for the first time.
I love it.
Because I can still remember what it was like to go into that job for the very first time, and all the issues that come at you. And it's quite a lonely position being the chief exec, because it's you and everything's on you. And so I now really enjoy helping other people through that process.
So as you reflect on your career, you've had a multitude of opportunities, some perhaps that you personally said, okay, I'm going to do this. You already talked about it, saying, I'm going to be CEO, but I would love a mentor. What do you see as that balance of the two, of being able to say, like, this is, I was able to select, I self-selected myself for this, versus this just happens, came in my lap, and what's that balance of? That's the first question. The second one is, what would you, when you reflect on your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I would never advise anyone to take my path in terms of career management.
What?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I don't regret a single thing. I am the Edith Piaf of business. Non je ne regrette rien. I regret nothing. And I've loved my career, and I've loved where I've ended up, and I absolutely love what I do today. Yeah. So don't get me wrong, that's not because I regret anything, but I absolutely believe I should have taken more interest and control of my development during my younger years. So I did tend to do jobs for a couple of years, do them well, and somebody would spot it from another area and they'd offer me another job. And I tended to go, that sounds really interesting. A bit like Rob, don't take a job you're not interested in. Don't stay in strategy and planning. If you can't get out of bed to do it, you're not going to long term be really good, because you will tail off, your energy will tail off, and then you will fail. So get excited about what you want to do. But I would take the next really interesting assignment instead of thinking, actually, I think I'm going to have a really good career. And in order to get that great career trajectory, I need to learn certain skills and capabilities. And I need to know where I've got gaps and how I'm going to manage those gaps. Because sometimes as a leader, you have to be self-aware enough to know that you're not going to be good at everything.
Fair enough.
You need to know when you will be excited and when you won't be. So one of my things, I get excited about new projects. I love the delivery of them. But at the end of the big delivery, when you've done all the bells and the balloons have gone off and the glitter has gone, somebody has to complete and finish everything. You know, if you've changed systems, somebody has to close the old system down. Well, I have to have someone on my team that does that, because I walk away at that stage and start the next project. So I know that about myself, and I choose to have people on my team who will compensate for that.
Okay, now I'm going to remind you about the last question, which is, if you could look back at your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
So I would say two things to myself. Number one is, I should have had more aspiration. I would say to my young self, have more aspiration in terms of what you can achieve and what you can put into life and get out of life. And what you put in is what you'll get out. Yeah. So number one, do that. And then the second thing I would say is have more confidence. One of the, and I said capability is necessary, but it's not sufficient.
Yes.
One of the ways it's not sufficient is you have to develop a sense of confidence in your own ability and in the ability of your team around you to deliver, and a confidence that you will succeed and can do things. Aspire to more and be more confident that you will make it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Rob, if you looked at your younger self,
It's a long time ago.
Any reflection or advice?
Wow. What would I give myself in terms of advice? Work harder at school.
Okay.
I came from the O levels and the A levels in the UK, so I know when I found A level maths particularly hard. I selected my subjects based that I was going to major in, which were physics, maths and chemistry, which I wasn't particularly good at, on the advice of others who told me that those were the topics to take, whereas actually I was really interested in biology.
Okay.
Now look, I became a banker after all of that, so it didn't really matter, to be quite honest. But I guess take your opportunities. So I think Alison's answer is brilliant. Be confident that you can succeed. Nobody goes into a football match expecting that they're going to lose. The team has got to want to win. You talked earlier on, and it was a big learn for me, that when I became the boss of all the contact centres, I had been running one, I thought, pretty successfully, and it had won a lot of awards. So I figured that now I was in the leadership job and I'd been given this senior executive position, that all I'd have to do was command everybody to do it my way, and everything would
Rob
fall
was sitting
into
so much
line.
straighter up at the time.
And then I realised very quickly that we'd got 3 different staff reward systems in place,
Right.
and because I was trying to impose mine on everyone else, people were not going there.
Right.
So that was another big learn, particularly when you're managing global teams, and you know. So I mean, some great points from you. So yeah, I've learned so much from Alison. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for both of you. This has been an amazing dialogue. There you have it. TP Women and everybody watching, thank you so much. Some key tenets of what I heard today, but please hear all of it, are aspire to be what you truly believe you can be, and aspire for more than even that. Be confident. Lead from the heart. Have authentic leadership. We heard that today. Pave it forward, what we heard from Rob and how Alison influenced his life, and other pivotal moments that help you prepare you throughout your life. And last but not least, you're constantly learning. We all are. Thank you again. This has truly been a privilege, truly a privilege getting to know you, hearing from you.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.